I'm calling to order this meeting. This is a regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. The time is 11:20 in the morning. And this meeting is being held in the Council Chambers, Room 500 of the John A. Wilson Building, although I believe several members are participating virtually. This meeting is available to the public live over Council Channel 13, cable television, and also on the council's website, which is www.dccouncil.gov. We have only a committee of the whole meeting today. Our next legislative meeting will be on Tuesday, April 2nd. We have two measures for markup in the committee of the whole and one other measure that's being reported out of a committee. We begin our committee of the whole meetings figuring out whether we actually have a quorum. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Chairman Mendelson.
Present.
Councilmember Allen.
Here.
Councilmember Bonds.
Here.
Councilmember Fruman.
Here.
Councilmember Gray.
Here.
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George.
Here.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Here.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Here.
Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Pinto.
Present.
Councilmember Robert White.
Present.
Councilmember Trahan White. Councilmember Trahan White. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. We have the Secretary's report of the filing of committee reports. I'm going to recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. I move to waive the reading of the Secretary's report.
It's been a motion to waive the reading of the report, which I think consists of one item. Is there discussion on the motion to waive the reading? All those in favor say aye.
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 That was anemic, but we'll say, are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the Secretary's log of introductions and referrals. Again, the Chair Pro Tem, Mr. McDuffie.
Move to waive the reading of the Secretary's log of introductions and referrals.
A motion to waive the reading. Is there discussion? On the motion to waive, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have two measures for markup in the committee of the whole. The first is PR 25-534, University of the District of Columbia, revised compensation scale for UDC undergraduate and graduate students, approval resolution of 2024. This was introduced at the request of the university last November. The purpose of this resolution is to approve the compensation scale for the UDC student workers in work study, teaching assistant, and other related capacities. As introduced, the resolution would approve wage increases for all graduate and undergraduate students employed by the university. The sources of funds for the student wages are institutional and federal grants. The university currently utilizes a flat compensation structure whereby all students employed by the university receive minimum wage regardless of their position, classification, or capacity. However, the minimum wage rate utilized by the District of Columbia increased last July 1st from $16.10 to $17, and thus the university must adjust its salary schedule to remain competitive and incentivize graduate students to seek employment on campus when their experience and maturity qualify them for job prospects with compensation above the minimum wage elsewhere. Also, the university receives grants where the compensation may exceed the maximum compensation on the compensation table for students, and the university must comply with the requirements of the grant. As I said, this legislation was introduced on November 14th at the university's request. The committee of the whole held a roundtable on this on February 12th. Committees received no testimony or comments in opposition. There's no objection. I'll move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? I think we can do a voice vote on this. All those in favor, again, this is on both the print and report, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? I hear no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure. Before I get there, I have three questions. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete? Madam Secretary, you were muted.
I just noticed that. Once the report and hearing record are filed.
Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal,
The university can absorb the increased salaries.
without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for the April 2nd legislative meeting. The next item for markup is PR 25-613, Child Fatality Review Committee, Patrina Jones Jez, Appointment Resolution of 2024. This resolution was introduced by me as a council appointment to appoint Ms. Patrina Jones Jez as a member of the Child Fatality Review Committee from the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children. And this appointment is on an at-will basis. So the Child Fatality Review Committee by statute has a member from the Office of the Ombudsperson, and the council makes that appointment. And that's what this is. Just a month or two ago, the council approved Ms. Patrina Jones Jez as the Ombudsperson. She's been acting in that capacity since last May, I believe. And as we did once before, I'm now proposing that we appoint the Ombudsperson to be the representative to the Child Fatality Review Committee. Ms. Jones Jez is a Ward 2 resident, and she served as the first chief deputy ombudsperson and then as acting ombudsperson for children after the unexpected departure of the first ombudsperson. And as I noted, she currently serves the District of Columbia as the District of Columbia Ombudsperson for Children. I'm not going to go through all of the bio or explanation that's in the report since we just considered her a couple months ago. The Child Fatality Review Committee was established in 2001, operates under the oversight of the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. The committee is composed of a minimum of 13 representatives from public agencies, along with members from federal, judicial, and private agencies, and 8 community representatives. The community representatives are meant to represent all District of Columbia wards. Each member should have specialized knowledge in child development, maternal and child health, child abuse and neglect, prevention, intervention, treatment, or research. So we did not have a hearing on this appointment, but as I said, we had a hearing on her qualifications to be the permanent ombudsperson, and that was just a few months ago. So without objection, I move both the print report, we leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion?
Chairman.
Yes, Councilmember Lewis George.
Thank you, Chairman. Patrina Jones Jez has been leading the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children for a year now in an acting capacity for 9 months, and then as the ombudsperson following her confirmation in January, which is in the Facilities and Family Service Committee. It is clear she has done a phenomenal job thus far. She is deeply knowledgeable about child welfare policies and has years of professional experience in the child welfare system and a personal experience as a foster parent. That is why I'm confident in her ability to actively and substantively contribute to the important work of the Child Fatality Review Committee. The Child Fatality Review Committee provides an opportunity for representatives of the executive branch, the council, and the courts, and outside stakeholders to come together and re-examine situations when the district could have done something differently. Ombudsperson Jones Jez will bring an invaluable perspective to the Child Fatality Review Committee in identifying what went wrong and what our government should do better in the future to prevent tragic and avoidable deaths of children in the District of Columbia. She has my wholehearted support, and I hope my colleagues will join me and you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? The vote will be on both the print and report, and we'll do a voice vote on this. All those in favor, this is on both the print and report. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Probably because one is not required
Correct.
as an appointment. Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for the April 2nd legislative meeting. We have one measure for consideration from other committees. and that is Bill 25-119, Healthy Homes and Residential Electrification Amendment Act of 2024, reported out of the Committee on Transportation and the Environment, chaired by Councilmember Charles Allen. Mr. Allen?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I introduced Bill 25-119, the Healthy Homes and Residential Electrification Amendment Act of 2024, along with Councilmembers Fruman, Gray, Lewis George, Nadeau, Parker, Pinto, and Robert White on February 2nd, 2023. The bill was referred to the Committee on Transportation and the Environment on February 7th. The committee held a hearing on the bill on May 9th, and it was approved unanimously at a markup on March 4th, 2024. Following a re-referral that you made last week, it is now before us today. Nearly a quarter of the district's energy generation comes from natural gas, and almost half of our households rely on gas to heat their homes. As we know, gas is actually a fossil fuel that we burn in our homes, and it's not as clean or as healthy as renewable energy sources like solar and wind. In addition to the harms of harvesting and transporting gas, drilling, fracking, and erosion, the harmful effects of gas inside the home are staggering. And when we're facing massive disparities in our city between childhood asthma, air quality, and even health indicators in our city, it's time for us to take action. Using gas to cook releases harmful byproducts, which can increase the odds of children developing respiratory illness by nearly 20%. Even unburnt natural gas poses health risks as it leaks from stoves. And stoves, of course, aren't the only gas-powered appliances to be concerned about. There's hot water heaters, there's furnaces, dryers, for example, and the data is clear. To meet our climate goals, to improve health and wellness, and to reduce the negative impacts on our environment, we have to reduce and eventually eliminate the use of fossil fuels and transitions toward sustainable energy. So how do we do it while balancing those impacts against other community needs like affordability and equity? The bill before us today creates a Breathe Easy program within the District of Energy and Environment. This new program will help low-income households, seniors, and working families in the district retrofit their homes away from fossil fuels and toward electricity. These retrofits for low-income households have to be free for those residents. Any retrofits to moderate income households will be on a sliding scale determined by DOEE. And because the district's clean energy economy must create more jobs for DC residents, this new program will also have to provide training and education to retrofit contractors. Under this bill, DOEE will have to complete 30,000 residential electrification retrofits for low-income households with interim benchmarks in 2027, 2032, and 2037 that increase over time. And now, just to be clear, since we've seen misinformation on this nationally, what we're doing here is a voluntary program. And so no, we will not be coming into your home and taking your gas stove away unless you want us to. And it's free. Before starting the retrofits, DOEE will have to let the public know how they're going to work, which appliances and materials will be used, and what the eligibility criteria will be. And DOEE will have to keep the public informed about the program's implementation, including how many they do each year. The bill also includes protections for households who benefit from the program. They won't be precluded from receiving other improvements provided by DOE or the DC agencies, and the value of the benefits received will not be counted as income for tax purposes. Mr. Chairman, may I have 30 more seconds?
Without objection.
The Healthy Homes Act will speed up our transition away from natural gas consumption and toward electrification. This will improve the health and well-being of DC residents, especially our children, and it will reduce fossil fuels' harmful effects on our environment. Beyond simply incentivizing residential electrification retrofits, the bill ensures that thousands of low and moderate income households will be able to participate in this transition at no cost. Before I conclude, I also want to note this legislation has a clean fiscal impact statement and a positive racial equity impact analysis. I also want to thank several organizations who've been incredible advocates and partners on this, including the Sierra Club's DC chapter, Washington Interfaith Network, Interfaith Power and Light, the DC Environmental Network, the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, and the NAACP DC branch. We also had a very meaningful recognition of the committee's markup of the work of my late committee director, Chris Laskowski, on this bill. And again, just want to honor his leadership on this bill and the district's fight for climate change. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I request this bill be added to the agenda for our next legislative meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Are there questions from members? Councilmember questions? Councilmember Lewis George.
Okay. I co-introduced the Healthy Homes Act because I know that it is necessary to meet the district climate goal. And DC buildings contribute 75% of our energy use and 75% of our greenhouse gas pollution. Residential buildings account for 37% of the building sector's energy use and 32% of its greenhouse gas pollution. 75% of all homes in DC currently use gas heat, cooking, or hot water. This bill is important not just because of what it will do, but how it will do it. We cannot leave behind homeowners or renters who cannot afford to do the switch. In DC, these homeowners and renters are overwhelmingly Black and brown. They don't deserve to be left with stoves that pollute their indoor air and contribute to their kids' asthma. We all deserve clean indoor air. The use of gas is so widespread and so impactful that the only way to achieve our climate goals is to help everyone move to electric together. The racial equity impact report was clear here that this is going to have a positive impact here in this city. I'm proud to be making this step forward to making DC healthier and more equitable. And Councilmember Allen, would you fully agree with that statement?
I would agree with that. And if I can give it a quick example, last year, this council funded a pilot program in River Terrace and Deanwood specifically to focus on equity. I think one of the things that we have tried to prioritize in taking climate action is putting equity first in front of mind, right? And I think being able to focus on communities in Ward 7, for example, with this pilot program is a really exciting way that we put that into action. Another part of this, and you touched on this, Councilmember, is the way that the federal incentives are structured is that for many households who want to make a transition, there are pretty significant rebates for being able to purchase, for example, an electric heat pump or be able to do a lot of the electrification. That works really well for the household that has the means and the money already to be able to upfront pay for that transition and then see the rebate on the back end. For a working family, a low-income household, a senior on a fixed income, that's simply not going to actually benefit them. And the risk is, if we don't take an action like this, it's those households that will be left with the legacy costs of all of the built infrastructure. And this is why I think so many of these members also spoke against Project Pipes. It is our lower income households, predominantly Black and brown households, will bear the brunt of those legacy costs. And this legislation affirmatively works to address that and make sure that low income households are able to get free electrification for moderate income households on a sliding scale.
Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations and thank you, Councilmember Allen, for all of your important work on this bill. You mentioned that this comes at no cost to district taxpayers. Can you elaborate a little bit on how this will be paid for and how the cost element will be absorbed in practice?
Thanks. Yes, so it is, according to the FIS, it is fully funded through funds that are located within the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund, the SETF, which is administered through DOEE.
Okay, and those funds already exist, right, from previous
Correct.
fees and things. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Allen, could you please help the public understand the finances in the bill? You mentioned moderate income household, meaning a household of total income greater than 80%, but less than 150% of the median family income. Can you give us some sort of numbers, so that people can understand what that really means in dollars and cents?
Yes, in terms of the way that the bill defines low income is 80% of AMI and below, and again, for moderate, between 80 and 150% of AMI. The actual dollar amount is based on household size and that percentage. I don't have that right in front of me about what the current AMI breakdown is per household size, but I can make sure I get that for you and we can share that. So that if you're asking for what is the actual dollar amount.
Yes, and usually when we quote the dollar amount, it is based on a household of 4. And so I just wanted to give the public a sense of what these numbers might mean as they're calculating that they want to be a part of the program. So thank you.
Agreed.
Further
Chairman.
questions from members? Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you so much, Councilmember Allen, for your leadership on this incredibly important bill. Too often there is a tension between the things we need to do urgently to protect the environment and the cost on people who already have limited incomes and see this as yet another urgent priority. The beauty for me of this bill is that we are creating incentives and where necessary, the means to help people retrofit their homes in order to move from fossil fuels to clean energy. That results in a cleaner atmosphere outside, but also cleaner air inside the homes. So this is so incredibly important. One of the concerns that I expect to hear raised is from folks who have for decades used gas stoves, who have a belief that their food will cook differently. Councilmember Allen, do you have thoughts on how we address that concern and help people over time get on board with this important environmental shift?
As somebody who has cooked on both gas and electric, I get it. There's I give gas credit. They created a very strong connection to feeling like cooking with gas. It's literally a branded statement, cooking with gas. I think that part of that's education, and part of that's also demonstration of what it looks like. Coming up on April 6th, that Saturday, April 6th, in a couple of weeks, and I would hope everybody shares the news about this, over at the DC Armory, there's going to be a Healthy Homes Fair where they're going to actually be demonstrating a lot of those electrical appliances. They're going to have electric and induction ovens where things are cooked. It helps kind of demystify for some folks, as well as just let other people learn about them. But you also will see more and more households where using an electric range or an induction oven is becoming much more commonplace. I can think, for example, the woman who runs one of Ward 6's best kitchen shops, Hill's Kitchen, made the switch a couple of years ago to an electric induction oven, and they themselves are one of the biggest ambassadors. They run a kitchen shop, and they talk about what it looks like to cook and what it means to do that. So I think some of that's just education, because a lot of us that grew up cooking on gas or still cook with gas, it's just been part of what's ingrained in us. So I think it'll take some time, but that's also why the legislation speaks to the education components that go with it. And recognizing as well, these changes aren't going to happen overnight, that it's phased in, but I think the legislation builds really strong benchmarks that we're reaching and achieving year after year.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, Councilmember Parker?
Thank you. And I will echo much of what has been said. I will be transparent in saying I have not been fully persuaded, and I've been clear with advocates about how we fully pay for this program. And I know there have been some changes in the language of the bill from when it was introduced to now. Councilmember Allen, can you answer 2 points? And this is directly in relation to some of the concerns I've heard from residents who are now confused and or concerned that their gas bills will increase because of this policy. One, we say we've already funded it. Can you just make clear how much money has been set aside in last year's budget to fund this? And then two, can you speak to the concerns that some neighbors have about Washington Gas and or others passing on the cost of this bill to them?
Sure. Well, there's nothing that Washington Gas would do to pass on the cost of this bill. You may be talking about Project Pipes, which is completely different. That will increase costs for households. Certainly, that's completely separate from this legislation, though.
Washington Gas and others would say, and I'm not defending them, but again, I think neighbors are confused and concerned, and I've heard from some, and as I've said to advocates, the requirements that would call for the retrofitting of district properties, as well as I know there was a penalty or fee structure that was built into the bill that has since been removed. There is language being shared with residents that your bill, as a result of your gas bill, as a result of this bill, will increase. And so I'm giving you the opportunity to kind of speak to that, as there are residents that have heard that.
I'd be fascinated to see who's putting that out, because that would be 100% incorrect. But so if someone's putting something like that out, I hope you'll push back on that too, given the fact that that's such a false statement. But the legislation This bill does not increase any household costs for the gas. Again, there may be people who are
So
misunderstanding
for
project
clarification,
types.
for DCHA, for instance, this bill, as I understand it, would require the retrofitting of those properties. Is that accurate?
No, it would not.
Okay, maybe I am misunderstanding that a part of this bill would call for
I
the
think,
ship.
I think you're referring to the introduced version, which back last year was looking at DC Housing Authority properties, so that when
Yes.
a DCHA property goes through a renovation to make that change. Because we actually have a green buildings law that we believe actually requires that anyway, that was no longer included in this bill.
Got
Because
it.
that's already DC law.
So this is helpful. So how much money has been set aside in last year's budget for this bill?
Do you mean the SETF?
Yes.
So the.
So we say it's been fully funded. I'm
Mhm.
trying to get clear on how much money is sitting in a pot to pay for this bill.
So DOE believes that they will be applying about $20 million over the fiscal plan to this project. That is going to be a combination of federal IRA funds that are coming in, as well as dollars that come from the SETF. But there's no new money being charged, no new money hitting households from this bill. The actual point of the entire bill is to do it for free. So those households would receive all of this, which is estimated about $30,000 value, for free.
For households, I'm over time, but
This only applies to lower income households. and
Again,
moderate
for households that are
For a
within
household
it.
like yours or mine, we're not going to be able to take advantage of this.
got it. If I could, just for 60 more seconds, Chairman.
Without objection. Is that
Again, I
60
do
or-
think there has been some confusing narratives around the cost of this bill. Part of this exchange was meant to allow for some of that to be cleared up. And I think this is an important step. I also do think we should be clear-eyed about the cost, not just for the implementation that has been spelled out here, but for future steps that we need to take. So again, thank you, Councilmember Allen, and to all that had a hand in putting this together.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I have three. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
And there is no fiscal impact?
The cost of the bill will be covered through one, federal grants, and two, existing resources within the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for the April 2nd legislative meeting. That's the only item for only item from other committees to be considered. Before we adjourn, I'm going to give a lengthy statement regarding the status of our budget. I would like to take a moment to explain the situation around our consideration of the budget for next fiscal year. As you know, we were to receive from the mayor her proposed budget for the fiscal year. We were to receive it tomorrow. By law, the council cannot and may not consider a budget until the mayor has submitted a proposal. That has not happened. Last November, I introduced a fiscal year 2025 budget submission requirements resolution. This happens every year. The introduction proposed that the mayor submit the budget by March 20th, 2024. The council adopted the resolution at its January 9th meeting and thereby required that the budget be submitted, quote, not later than March 20th, 2024, unquote. At no time did the mayor or her administration object to the date. In January, the chief financial officer stated that to actually submit the budget in writing and with all the agency chapters, tables, etc., he must have 10 days after pencils down to conduct the required due diligence to ensure that the budget and financial plan are balanced, including any necessary technical adjustments, that the Budget Support Act along with the Local Budget Act are thoroughly reviewed for financial and legal sufficiency, that documents required by the council are properly vetted and assembled, and to ensure timely publication of the budget book on the web and/or physical books. At no time did either the mayor or administration or the CFO ask that the submission date be changed. The mayor began budget preparation last September. That was over 7 months ago. Of course, some adjustments would have to be made as a result of the February revenue estimates, but those estimates were actually a positive surprise as they showed more revenue growth than previously expected. Nevertheless, as March 10th approached, I was aware that the mayor's budget team was working feverishly and might not make the CFO's 10-day pencils down deadline. However, I was led to believe that no later than Tuesday, quote, no later than Tuesday, unquote, meaning March 12th was the target. Last week came and went. I was told that the iterative process between the executive and the OCFO was slow. But on Thursday, I was assured the pencils down would be Friday noon. That has not happened. In fact, the mayor was still making changes on Sunday, maybe even yesterday. Yesterday afternoon, I wrote both the OCFO and the city administrator about this. Only the deputy CFO budget director responded. And he wrote to say that pencils down could happen as soon as tomorrow, meaning today. This delay is 100% on the mayor. It disregards the law. It is an affront to the council. As you know, the budget office prepares a complex schedule to accommodate 11 committees holding 3 to 6 each budget hearings over a 1-month period. It's complicated because under the Home Rule Act, we have 70 days to act, and we respect deadlines. The schedule must work around religious holidays, school spring break, a major economic development conference, and now the June 4th primary election. All of that's tossed out, which is unfair to the hundreds of public witnesses who now must rearrange their own schedules and don't know how. I've asked our budget director to prepare a new schedule, but only after the mayor's pencils down and the budget is finally with the OCFO. Separately, there is an issue concerning the reserve funds. On this, I have sided with the executive. As you know, the government has 4 reserve funds. Each has different requirements. 2 are required by the Home Rule Act. The other 2 were established by the council in local law and are a reflection of the council's commitment to good financial management. The Government Financial Officers Association recommends that governments should always have reserves and that those reserves should be equal to 2 months or 60 days expenditures. That is our policy as well. Last year, for the first time since before the pandemic, our reserves were at 51 days, not 60 days. We've been there before. The Fiscal Stabilization Reserve, which is one of the 2 local reserves, is the lowest, 12% funded as of last September 30th. And the chief financial officer is insisting that both the mayor and council must find and spend $253.6 million to replenish the fund with this year's budget. That would mean $253.6 million in cuts on top of the roughly $900 million the mayor is already taking. When both the city administrator and I objected, argued, and asked for the CFO's legal basis, he replied, one day after pencils down, by the way, quote, "There is no legal requirement that the reserve be replenished following its use," unquote. Actually, what the law states explicitly is that if the Fiscal Stabilization Reserve is below full funding, it shall be replenished to undesignated end-of-year fund balance. In other words, year-end surplus. That's the law. In other words, it is to be replenished through surplus, not through an appropriation. At the end of the last fiscal year, we had almost $1.6 billion combined in the 4 reserve funds. $1.6 billion. The CFO is insisting on roughly $1.8 billion. That adversely affects our ability to restore or maintain programs necessary for the safety net, social justice, public safety, core municipal functions, public education, the elderly, and so forth. What is equally or more concerning is that the CFO goes on to justify his decision by arguing that he has, quote, "the authority and responsibility to evaluate all aspects of the budget, including its failure to replenish the reserve, in order to determine whether the proposed budget is balanced, financially sound, and supportive of the district's financial stability," unquote. I'm going to reread that with some emphasis. He has the authority and responsibility to evaluate all aspects of the budget, not just whether it's balanced, including its failure to replenish the reserve, in order to determine whether the proposed budget is not just balanced, but also financially sound, whatever that means, and supportive of the district's financial stability, whatever that means. This is very broad interpretation and subverts our authority, the council's authority as appropriators. Think of it. So last year he canceled the free bus program. Next year he could cancel other programs or maybe insist on firing agency directors because they mismanaged their budgets. Both the city administrator and I have asked for compromise, and I think that would be ideal. It's good practice to replenish our reserves at 100%. Absolutely. Replenish our reserves at 100%. But the best course right now is to do what we did over the last decade, essentially a payment plan over the next several years that brings the reserves back to full strength. Compromise is reasonable. It is the best course. But so far, the CFO has said no and dug in. So this is the current situation regarding the fiscal year 2025 budget, which is due tomorrow. Thank you. There's no further business. Our next meeting, regular meeting, is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. Time is 11:55 in the morning, and this meeting is adjourned.